Welcome to Big Closet, Small Planet, made possible by the C&A Foundation, the Rylander Foundation, and TENCEL. The podcast is produced in collaboration with Ecotextile News. I'm Mike Schrager. Today we are launching a new segment, tentatively called Opinion. Maybe we should find a better name. What do you think, Lewis? Ideas are welcome. Anyway, in this segment, we are offering time to experts, to leaders, to practitioners, stakeholders, to advocate for a particular perspective on how to accelerate change in our industry. Keep in mind, this perspective or opinion are those of the guest and not of Big Closet, Small Planet or our sponsors. Good to note that. So in the opinion seat today is Lewis Perkins from the Apparel Impact Institute. Welcome, Lewis.
Thank you, Mike. It's great to be here.
So, what are your messages for our audience today? What are you advocating for?
Thanks, Mike. I have four things that are on my mind today, and I'll just kind of deliver these key messages. The first one is, globally, we're standing at a pretty big turning point, and the fashion industry really must become a driver to address and tackle the environmental issues that are facing our planet and humanity today. The second one is we can't afford to reinvent the wheel now. The third one is we already know what to do. That's the good news. And the fourth one is that collective action is the way we're going to achieve our biggest goals.
So, Lewis, the microphone is now yours to make your case around these.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Well, let me tell you a little bit, first of all, about me and our organization. I'm running an organization called the Apparel Impact Institute. We were founded in the fall of 2018 as a response to the industry demand to drive impact. We rolled out of the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, but we're a separate organization working very closely with an ecosystem of players. And what we do is simple. We identify, fund, scale, and measure programs that drive impact for the apparel sector. Basically, we're here to streamline the best environmental programs that are out there and scale them. We believe in taking an industry-wide approach to this in a very strategic way, and we also create funding strategies or models that we can use to best scale these programs. In the process, we think we're creating greater industry alignment, consistent impact metrics, and increased funding to the work. So we're working directly with the industry. And how we're doing that is in a collaborative way. We're partnering with brands and retailers, as well as the facilities in the supply chain where they source, to roll out best-in-class programs, the ones that have been tested and proven to work, the ones that are actually presenting impact results. And then we're bringing philanthropic matching dollars to help de-risk early stage programming. So in other words, we know that the existing programs out there are just the beginning of the types of pilot projects that need to be tested and de-risked and then ultimately scaled to the industry. So we're doing this in a way that builds upon some of the low-hanging fruit programs of resource efficiencies that can be identified to really activate the supply chain, to get them engaged in a continuous improvement roadmap to meet higher levels of impact. And in the process of that, then we're really looking at how do you drive these programs to some of the biggest key issues, such as climate change, water stewardship, human and environmental health, basically. So let's discuss, what is it going to take for the industry to actually cut through some of the issues and solve for big issues like climate change and water health. The good news is when we talk about climate, we actually know what to do. There are 5 key areas that we need to address in order to reach the science-based targets goals that the industry is laying out for itself. And they are this. The first one is let's scale energy efficiency improvements. The second one is phasing out coal boilers, stop burning coal. The third is replacing fossil fuels with biomass. If you're taking coal and fossil fuel out of the equation, what do you replace it with? And then the fourth and fifth are really related to clean energy. 4 is installing on-site photovoltaic, and 5 is building up and sourcing a local grid of renewable energy. Now, my advice to the audience listening today is this. And what I really want to emphasize, please don't reinvent the wheel. We don't need to reinvent the wheel right now. There are a number of outstanding programs and initiatives that are taking on not only the creation and driving of impact solutions, but the measurement, the tools, the real framework that's here. We're basically 10 years into our fashion sustainability movement here. And what I know from having worked in other sectors like the built environment, when you start to see these arcs of reaching a certain point, you know that certain things are going to happen. And with that, it's natural that we may want to proliferate many more programs out there and pilots. The reality is we don't need to. Now is the time to double down on the existing programs and tools that we know already work. And now is the time also to do it in collaboration. So there are going to be some new pilots that need to be created. There's no doubt that on top of the programs that are out there, we do need to identify the white space and look at how to achieve programs within these areas that I've discussed and other areas that we'll identify. But we can do that with existing partners. We can also do that with transparency, and we can do that with brand collaboration and alignment. And that's the way that we're going to get to 2030 and actually have reached the goals that we're stating publicly must be reached. So, let me explain, why is this important? Why should we not reinvent the wheel? Well, it's a huge issue that we've seen. Everybody wants to put their own stamp on sustainability solutions, and oftentimes they want to market or brand that as their unique approach to sustainability. But the truth is, going off and creating new solutions, we risk fragmentation. We risk the slowing down of the work. We risk good knowledge getting lost. When things fail, we learn just as much as when things succeed. We need that to be in a public forum. We need there to be a framework for being able to share the information and almost apply design thinking to reiterate these programs. Now, the other risk is that, if we're creating duplicitous efforts, then we're wasting money, we're wasting staff time, and we're confusing our manufacturers, right? We're confusing the supply chain when one party's going in on a Monday and the next one's going in on a Tuesday, and they look similar, but they're different. And this is a mess. We must align this. We must work towards building this roadmap or menu of options that we're taking as an industry. We're signaling the market in one consolidated way. Coordination is really the only way we're going to make progress in this very short 10-year period of time. So let me give you an example of how we're doing it at AII. We are working on aligning mill improvement work. And this is really a baseline to getting started. As our friend Linda Greer in the industry says, it's the gateway drug to doing more sustainability and environmental work in the facility. It's low-hanging fruit, but it does yield high levels of CO2 and water savings in an area that has the most negative impact on CO2 and water. So we're taking the multiple programs that are out there and we're aligning them under a core set of criteria. And we're focusing to start on the wet processing. This is where we're dyeing our fabrics. This is where that negative impact is happening. But we're also expanding the programs to look at tier 1 cut and sew garment stage, tier 3 yarn prep, to look at what unique best practices need to be rolled out across the different areas of supply chain, and doing in a way that anyone who's running a mill improvement program or a garment stage improvement program or a yarn prep improvement program is aligned under a common set of criteria, measurement, price point, and that we're doing it in a consolidated way. And what AII will then do is fund these initiatives to scale across a coordinated roadmap. So we're building then, as I alluded to earlier, this continuous improvement roadmap of options that facilities can build upon low-hanging fruit as they're stepping into higher levels of achieving their impact goals. So basically, this is a pathway forward to cleaner water, better chemistry, and clean energy. This is how we get there. So in closing, let me stress that I think the biggest goal that the industry should be tackling now is related to climate change, and a very close second to water health, water stewardship that is interrelated. And secondly, when you look at some of the other initiatives that are out there around green chemistry, around materials, circularity, they're also driving towards climate and water issues as well too. So we do see that there are direct and indirect impacts that are happening when we take on programs around circularity, around materials, around chemistry. But ultimately, we must address, climate and water as the most critical issues of this next decade. So my key issues, once again, are, the fashion industry must become the driver to address and tackle these environmental issues for our planet and for our humanity today. And this means that making public benefit as important to our mission as the products we make and sell. We should not waste time reinventing the wheel. The good news is we already know what to do. And we also know that collective action and transparency associated with that action is how we're going to achieve these goals. Thanks, Mike.
Lewis has spoken. So what do you, our listeners, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have an additional ideas you could build on what Lewis is promoting? Reach out to us at bigclosets at sustainablefashionacademy.org. Lewis Perkins, thanks for taking the time to make your case.